Welcome everyone to another episode of the KQL Cafe, February 2023 edition. And before I actually forget, because I will forget, please be aware that in March, Johnny and I were both attending live conferences. So we have a little conflict with our routine last Tuesday of the month. So there won't be a last Tuesday in March KQL episode, but there will be at the very beginning of April. So basically in April, we're going to run two shows. You'll find the details on the meetup as well as on our KQLCafe.com website. So yeah, your hosts as always, Johnny and myself, although Johnny is just pushing the buttons as he had to fly to Italy for personal reasons. So no contributions from him, sadly, but he'll be back next month. So the agenda, as always, a warm welcome to everyone who's attending live. Really appreciate that. But of course, also, if you happen to watch this video later, a welcome as well. So I'll like to briefly mention the interactive KQL cheat sheet that came across last week. I want to highlight the ABC of threat hunting documentation that Microsoft recently published because I found something cool in that document. And then briefly talk about my personal experiences with the back unpack KQL function as well as promised last time, the parse command line. And then, of course, we have a guest. We have Ugur in our show today, and I'm super excited because a couple of months ago I used the same strategy to convince people to start looking into KQL. The company I work for, of course, is heavily security focused, but we also have colleagues whose day job is to work with Intune, and I believe and I hope this could be an eye opener, and also to demonstrate that although very much used by security people, KQL is there for everyone, and I'm sure Ugur is gonna demonstrate. And after this show, I believe that every workplace engineer will go to their Intune instance and enable their log analytics workspace. Yeah. And lastly, if anyone has a contribution for what did you do this month, or if you have any questions, please bring them on. So the interactive KQL cheat sheet, what a word. This came by. To be honest, I forgot the name, but it's coming from Norway. So what we have here is similar as we saw, as we demonstrated last month, the KQLSearch. This is now, let's call it a similar project. So with the intent to search for things and unlike the KQLSearch, which is basically indexing and allowing you to search across all sorts of GitHub repositories that contain KQL code. This one is basically a an interface that should help beginners, but also it's organized in different categories where you basically can get code snippets for KQL. So if you like, take a look. There's also some publishing, some guidance for those that are looking at the detective, Custo detective. Some hints, so not the solutions, luckily, but some hints, how to get to your solution eventually. So give it a try and let the author know what you think about it. Then the ABC of threat hunting. So that's this document. You can download it from here. It's published by the Microsoft, I believe it's the Dart team that published this. And yeah, it looks very much like a marketing document, which it is, of course, or, a guide. And yeah, ABC, to be honest, I thought, yeah, okay, ABC, that's the ABC of, KQL. But actually taking a closer look and reading the document really letter by letter, the A and the B and the C have a meaning. So it's all about, authentication, backdoors, and communication. Now, what's cool about this document, of course, that it's, explaining why we should do threat hunting and key takeaways. But as I was going through this document, and I just recognized that I actually have the wrong one. Let me see. It was not the ABC document. It was, that's my mistake. But there's a related document to this. Oh yeah, it's the Threat Hunting Survival Guide book, which goes into even more detail. And while I was reading this, I noticed, okay, there's all those links. But then I noticed that at some point, when they start with their example, there was this button here, and it says Go Hunt. So yeah, Go Hunt. So copy the link now, and go into my instance here. What actually happens, it will open, if you have Microsoft 365 Defender, of course, it will basically open Microsoft 365 Defender and open a couple of, hunting queries and examples for each of the use cases mentioned there. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the trick. There's a couple of more Go Hunt buttons in that document. So if you're interested for some inspiration around the ABC for threat hunting, there's some nice KQL in there as well. I will probably copy the KQL queries also into the show notes. I don't believe there's a copyright on that, just for those who don't happen to have access to the Microsoft 365 Defender platform. Good. Then my bag unpack case, and that's kind of a funny one because I initially had an issue, and I will explain you what it was. But funny enough, today when I was preparing for the session, the error got away. Now I don't know whether the error, has to do with the data that was inside, or maybe the formatting. Anyway, this is a KQL query that we can use if you have Microsoft 365 Defender to actually look at tampering attempts. Now, why tampering attempts? Because Microsoft recently also in January introduced tamper protection for exclusions. So just for those who don't know what tamper protection is, it's a feature from Microsoft Defender that actually prevents people, even if they are a local administrator, to tamper with Defender. So stopping the service, trying to turn off real-time protection and that sort of activities. Because for those familiar with the matter, there's various malware or scripts, that try to turn off Microsoft Defender. Now, a new enhancement is that, also exclusions are now protected. And that means that, even as a local administrator, if I have that tamper protection for exclusions enabled, which I can do through Microsoft Intune, There's no way, even if I'm a local administrator, that I can, overwrite the registry or add any exclusions, which maybe a malicious actor would do. So yeah, nice feature, but of course I was interested in the KQL part of the study. So that's what we have here. Because I'm forwarding my Defender logs into Sentinel. So first attempt was this one. As you can see, we can now nicely parse out all the details of these tamper attempts. But then I thought, well, I have basically too many data here. Now, what would we do? Of course, I could do a project or a project remove. But at the same time, I also had an error, which, funny enough, now doesn't pop up again. But the error had to do with some fields. And I also wanted to include this into a Sentinel analytics rule, which wouldn't work neither the way I had structured this query. So I called up my best buddy, Johnny, and he actually gave me a nice hint that how we can actually enhance the back unpack command by using, first of all, the flag for the columns conflict to keep the source, as well as explicitly specifying the columns I'm interested in. And that means I now have a nice view of all the tamper attempt activities. Oh, let me do that again. Yeah, that were happening. So blocked. I simulated this by basically opening a command prompt, and trying to set registry keys, but it wouldn't work. Now, this is not just working for Windows, but the same is also working for, as you can see here, my MacBook. So also any tamper attempts that I make to a Mac device will be logged and of course be blocked. So that's the back unpack example that I have for this week. The next one, as mentioned, is the parse command line, which I also find an interesting one. Of course, if you're looking for something you already know, why would you do the whole hassle with that? So, if I say, okay, if I'm just going here and I say, okay, device events, PowerShell, of course, I could do something like, where initiating process command line, contains download. If you know what you're looking for, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to, let me do this. Where time generated, 180 days. So, funny, I thought I had. Let's do execution. Yeah. So all PowerShell commands can have the word execution in it. But if I actually want to do some data mining and look for stuff that I wasn't aware of, this project, this parse command line can be very interesting. Now, today it's only supported for Windows. That's why we have to put Windows in here. But yeah, I assume that at some point we're going to see support for other operating systems as well. So let me do that again. And what now basically happens is that if I parse the command line, what it will do, it will basically, break up the whole command line into pieces. Now that's nice as well, but how does that help? Well, of course, I could do things now if I wanted. If I'm, maybe have a detection query, I could say, okay, let bad stuff equals dynamic. Of course, I could do things like this. And I could say, okay, restricted, and maybe execution policy. Yeah, and I could say, okay, oops, let me declare that variable. And then I would, probably do, okay, where CMD1 has any bad stuff. And if the demo codes are with me, I should only get, those rows returned, where I actually have those things included. So that could be one way how to do that. But what I did today in a live environment is to basically, first of all, expand it and then basically get a summarized count and then simply mining, through the individual expressions that I found here. Yeah. And that might actually help you to, get an eye on something you weren't aware of or that might look suspicious and that you want to further analyze. Of course, you can do that basically with, with any table. So here, I did this with named pipe. I catched the named pipe events, and my attention was brought to a named pipe that had HTTP in it. You can do, of course, also device network events where you want to look for download. Let me change this one. And of course, we see a lot of Microsoft download stuff in here. But yeah, so no rocket science really. I mean, parse command line is basically, breaking up the command line, the individual strings. But yeah, it might help you with, going through your data, should you be a threat hunter or just interested in what's going on with your command lines in your environment. Yeah. Good. And yeah, that was a short introduction. No rocket science this month. And yeah, with that, I would actually like to introduce our today's guest, Ugur. And yeah, without further ado, Ugur, I say please give a brief introduction and tell us about all the awesome stuff you do with KQL and Intune.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone again. So I would like to share my screen if it's working. Window. I think that's the right one. Yeah. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Great. Okay, let me move this screen to the side. So yeah, I'm having like two topics for today. The first one will be KQL and Intune, and the second one will be KQLSearch.com, which is yeah, most of you will know this website already. So, but I guess it will be interesting to see what's happening in the background, in the back end, and what's happening in the front end. So that's a topic, the second topic for today. I will introduce myself. My name is Ugur Koc. I'm from Germany, and I'm currently also working with topics like cybersecurity and cloud engineering, but I'm focusing right now on client management, especially with Intune, and that's also the primary tool with what I'm using, Intune, PowerShell, and KQL. Socials, I have a blog where I post occasionally some things that I want to share with the public, tools or scripts, etc. And also, this is my Twitter handle, and this is my LinkedIn if you want to connect on there also, or ask questions even. Okay, so Intune is, I guess, well known to the people here, but it's from the very basics. It's a mobile device management solution for Microsoft, where you can manage different devices from different platforms, Windows, macOS. Currently, just the compliance policies with Linux, but it's coming until the end of the year, I guess, where you can fully manage it. Also, you can manage iPads, you can manage iPhones, and also Androids with Intune. So while we manage devices with Intune, we also collect a very, very much data about everything that's runs on these devices, and we also collect logs for monitoring purposes, or if you want just to troubleshoot problems for the user or for ourselves, just to understand what's happening. We can, so there are 4 parts essentially for data tables in Intune that's being published for us to look into. Those are audit, compliance, device, and operational data tables. And as I also wrote here on the right side, these data can be or will be overwhelming at the first sight because it's not filtered, it's not sorted, and you really have to know what you're searching for. You will never find it. And it's really not easy to understand because it's just so much and overwhelming. Just to give an example, on the bottom left side, imagine you have 100 devices in your infrastructure. That would be minimum approximately 300 to 400 entries per day, just because the devices are sending data frequently per day to Intune, just to give the status back. Hey, I have this application installed. The device OS operating system is at this state. It's updated, and so on and so forth. It's so much data. It's getting crazy. So we have also another option. Intune has this data tables built in, audit, compliance, device, and operational. But we can also ingest data via PowerShell. This would be just imagine we have Log Analytics Workspace, which is imaginary like a bucket, and you can also ingest data with PowerShell. Things like just install applications on your device that are maybe not seen in Intune, like portable applications or something. You can ingest this data also, but also something very interesting is the Windows event logs with the monitoring agent. I guess the new one is called Azure Monitoring Agent. I'm not sure about the name, but I guess it is. And so in the end of the day, you can collect data from everywhere. And the important part, which I will show later on, is the filtering and sorting of this data. Oops. So these data tables in Intune are divided in 4 parts, as I mentioned earlier. It's compliance, device, audit, and operational. If you think about these devices, when we manage them, we need information like device names, who is the user using this device, what's the OS update version of the device, do we need to patch it to the newest version from Microsoft, for example, but also data about device IDs, compliance state, and so on and so forth. And the most interesting from me, from the security perspective, is the operational and audit part. So you can also see who has deleted a device in Intune, who has renamed a device in Intune, who has changed or updated or patched a configuration profile. That's also visible in the logs. So one thing that's really, it's not really popular, but as Alex also mentioned earlier, KQL is not only security related, but it could be also very, very mighty instrument for people like that manage device in Intune, but also other services, which you will see later on when we talk about KQLSearch.com. And the story of me is, why did I start with KQL? There has to be a problem that I want to solve at the first place. So I thought about it. Which problems do I have, and how can I solve it? And the problems that I have, or the questions that I have, are here at the bottom, which we go through with 2 or 3 examples later on. But also, how can I sort the relevant data to visualize my key performance indicators, right? So if you're managing devices, you will be asked from the management or from a project team, hey, look, we have an offboarding process. Can you tell us which device wasn't online for the last 90 days, for example? Or security wants to know how well patched our infrastructure is. And all of this is visible inside the events or data that is being collected from the devices. One thing that's important to know is you can also find this data in the user interface from Microsoft. You can also collect the data with Grave API. You can build PowerShell scripts to collect this data. Everything. So there are more ways to the solution in the end of the day. But for me personally, KQL in combination with Azure Workbooks and Azure Log Analytics was the most convenient way, and I will show you why in the next steps. But first to the questions. So these are real questions, right? So this is not something I fantasized about when I prepared the slides, but these were really the questions that I've asked myself and also colleagues asked me. We wanted to know how many devices are Azure AD joined or hybrid joined, devices that were not active in the last 90 days, devices that need to be updated, and so on and so forth. So basically, to answer these questions, we have the data, we know our questions. Now we need to find a solution or answer to our questions. So there are basically 3 steps. We need to find the data. That's easy because the data comes from Intune primarily. As I said earlier, we can also ingest data from PowerShell or syslog, etc., or another monitoring agent. And the data must be trusted, so it must not be falsified. That's most importantly, because if someone in the middle can falsify or change any information that's being analyzed by you in the end, that's not trustworthy. So yeah, the answer you get in the end of the day can just be wrong. So you have to trust the source at this point. Also, all of this data is being sent to the Log Analytics workspace. I'm not going through all the steps which you have to set up in Intune. It's actually, there's so many blog posts about it and tutorials from Microsoft and guides from Microsoft. It's basically 3 or 4 clicks you have to do and connect to the Azure Log Analytics workspace. The second step is sort data. So we want to, so finding data is easy, as I wrote there, and sorting is hard. Why is sorting so hard? Because we have to put a meaning behind the data we found or we want to analyze, and also make it easier to analyze, because we can only find things if we know that they exist, and we also have need a question that we want to answer, because we need to know what we are searching for. And that could be pretty hard at the beginning, but all of this is worth it when we try to visualize also our data in Grafana or Azure Workbooks, just to show this to people that are not really working with Intune, for example, but they want to analyze our device infrastructure. Yeah, and that's visualization for the third part would be this step. Okay, next slide. KQL queries can be very, very complicated. And to be honest, I have learned for myself that the the shortest queries are mostly the easiest and the best in the end. Why? Because KQL queries are so easy to read, to understand, because every line tells you already what it is searching for, right? So if you're looking at the first query here, devices that are not compliant, the first line is the table we already know all of. We have the data that's been searched for, also the time frame, compliance state is not compliant. We summarize the data by device name, and then we show us the compliance state, device name, and last contact. So at the end of the day, we have a nice table with the data we want to know of. The same goes for the next query. I won't go into the details, but you get the point of it. The audit logs can also be shown in the log analytics workspace. So we can also see the jailbroken device here as well. Those things are really, really important because these 5 lines can answer any question from people around you, from project team or from the management. So KQL query is definitely my go-to tool for when I'm searching for data or when I'm just filtering for data. If someone is asking, hey, how many jailbroken iOS devices do we have, or do we have any of them? Preferably not. It's just 5 lines that you can show the answer to. One thing that's also important is I've mentioned the 4 tables at the beginning. As you may be aware, it's also possible to connect data tables, not only within Intune itself, but also using, for example, in this device sign-ins example, Azure logs, right? So what I've done here is I've looked into sign-in logs from Azure the last time. And this was actually someone who asked this over Twitter. And this was the query for the guy, which name I've forgotten right now. Okay, so queries can be easy, can be hard, but the most interesting part for everyone that's not us could be also a visualization, right? So this is a screenshot from my test environment where I have Android, iOS, and Windows clients. And if you look at I will actually zoom in a bit if it's working. Yeah, that looks good. So I've created Azure Workbook just to visualize my data, and behind every graph or the visualization is a KQL query which searches for data that you want to show. So here's a visualization for the Android versions. I have 2 devices, one device is on 9.0 and one device is on 10.0. I have 3 iOS devices, which are all on 15.7. Windows versions are these devices, and I have 1 Windows with the Pro version and 1 on the Enterprise version. At the bottom of it, there are, it's not pretty, I know, but if you're having more devices on your environment, I just have these couple of devices, but you also could show you don't have to use a pie chart to show the data or visualize this data. You can also show any other charts or use any other charts just to visualize the data. Here are the joint types. I have 2 devices which are Azure AD joined, and I have 7 devices that were active today at 1 a.m. Right. Okay. That's all for the first part. I would like to summarize it. So if you have like colleagues or if you're working with Intune yourself, just give it a try to also query data for your devices you manage in Intune. It doesn't matter if they are co-managed or if they're managed only by Intune, but the you will win so much out of the data if you analyze it, and you can also troubleshoot so much. So, and one use case I am already working on is, for example, I'm collecting Windows event logs, and when I publish any updates to these devices, I can proactively see if, for example, a driver causes any errors. If I want to, let's say, I have driver updates for my Wi-Fi adapter or something, and it's just breaks with the new update. So I don't have to wait for any feedback from the user. I can proactively see this error beforehand. So that's also a really cool tool, and it's not that pricey actually. Okay, so the second part.
Yeah, I would like just to quickly stay on the Intune KQL. When you say not so pricey, can you share any experiences with, a real world environment? What we can expect? Like, I don't know, 100,000, 2,000 devices. What do we expect in terms of log analytics storage?
Sure. Yeah. So one important thing, and that's also true for Sentinel, is you have to choose wisely before you ingest all data. So not every data makes sense. Let me go to I guess it was third slide. Yeah. So let's say you were just interested in the device. First of all, you need to know which data you're searching for, right? So if the answer to your question is only in the data table from the device or operation or compliance or audit, you don't have to ingest all 4 of them. So you can also reduce the cost at the very, very first step. From the experience, so if you ingest all 4 of them, let's say you have 100,000 devices in your environment that you're managing with Intune, it's 3 digits maximum, between $10 to $100 per month.
Yeah.
Not more, not less.
Okay.
And also depends on the retention policy, right? So if you want to also query data that's older than 90 days, I guess, was the retention default policy, then you would also have to store the data in a Azure storage account, which will also cost something. But generally, it will not be more than 3 digits. It will be well under $100 for 100K devices.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And maybe for those like watching the video, so who were mentioned, there's a tons of blocks. Nevertheless, let me quickly allow for those that are very interested. So first thing you need to do, of course, create a resource group. If you're in testing, I would not really, and if you're using Sentinel, I wouldn't per se start with directly ingesting your data into Sentinel, because as you know, in Sentinel, you pay for log ingestion as well as for the Sentinel. And if there's no reason why you need the data in Sentinel, another personal reason I have is, workplace people have nothing to lose in a Sentinel workspace because there's personal identifiable information. So you might have an issue with, providing operational log data to, probably a lot of people would be interested. So in the first instance, I will keep that separate, unless you're a small company, and you're the only one anyway who deals with all the data. But otherwise, I will keep it separate. This is where in Intune, you basically go to tenant administration, diagnostic settings, and then here you would enable your logs and tell it where to go. And then the result will be as following. Then before you do that, to avoid the bill shock, and I keep on repeating this with all my customers whenever I onboard a log analytics workspace, because I just had those 2 moments where people approach me very much in panic mode. One was really, and I keep on telling that story, like $20,000, that they hadn't planned for. And I mean, we can do a lot of cool things with $20,000. So when you set up your log analytics base, do yourself, your company a favor. Go to the usage and estimated costs, and do this daily cap setting. Yeah, turn it on. Start low, like 1 gigabyte. If you find out you need more, you can always increase it. But really turn this thing on. Otherwise, you might generate more cost as you like. Then, in terms of retention, as Ugur mentioned, so when you have a standard log analytics workspace, your standard data retention by default is 30 days, free of charge. If you're running Sentinel, that would be 90 days. And yeah, here again, think wisely, how far back do I need to go with my information? Yeah. So that's just what I quickly wanted to ingest for those, totally excited and who want to start trying out this capability.
Thank you, Alex. So one point that I would mention here is also the most data that is being generated is by far from the audit data table. If you're using different scripts to automate things in Intune, so everything you do in Intune is a additional entry. If you use a script that's sync your devices or change policies or so on, or just add devices to another assignment, everything you do there is another entry, and that's by far the data table that has the most entries. Yeah. Okay, can I change to the second topic, Alex? Okay, let me see. Okay. You can see the PowerPoint, right? Great. So the second topic will be KQLSearch.com. Maybe some of you guys already visited the website, or even better, used it for search for K. Basically, let me see. Let me switch to this slide. This is basically something that was very long in my mind, to have an easier way to search for KQL queries, because the hardest part of starting with KQL for me was it's way too complicated to get started. Even though it's easy to understand today, it wasn't that easy to understand 1 year ago. So it made it so much easier to just find queries from the community, or just check how other people create queries, or even how can I create queries, or maybe. So I thought to myself, I'm not the one that has a use case. Let's maybe just find OS versions for my devices, or updates that's available for my devices. So there's already someone on the internet that maybe written a query about it. And just to check as a beginner, how did they do it? Maybe I can write a new line that's better for me, from my infrastructure. And so this website was born. Let me switch to my browser. Share window. There you go. Okay, now you should see the Edge browser with the website. So this is KQLSearch.com, and the first thing that's the most important part. Those queries that you can or will find here are all from GitHub, and the total sum of queries that are being shown today here are over 1,100 queries. And if you press on the info button on the top left, you will also see the GitHub repositories the website searches for. So I've talked in the first place about trustworthy queries. So this is one of the steps that I've taken to only include repositories or from people that the community knows of. There will be added more in this in the future, but that's all for now. So Matt Zorich, Rod Trent, Jose Bertian. I think Bertian is also here today. So thank you for your work and that you share the queries with us, and also the 50 or 60 KQL Intune queries from me are also included here. So basically, if I want to check the sign-in logs from the devices, for example, I have a use case, I want to check the sign-in logs, I can type that in here in the search box. And what it does for me is it checks for the query names. And if there is a sign-in, it will also show me here every query that shows the sign-ins in a way. So I can also check for devices, and it will show me the queries that are related to devices for me. So let me go back to the sign-ins. I can press on this query, and it will show me the query. You can copy the query here directly and copy paste it to your Log Analytics workspace just to run the query. You can also press on the little GitHub button on the right side, which will open the queries in GitHub. Let me close this again. So I want to run this query, for example. I will copy it, paste it right here, and run it here. So this is for me, the easiest way to just getting started with queries. And it looks like that it's also a website that uses most people use today. I have checked the analytics of this website, and the website gets about 150 users per day. And many people are staying for a long time on the website, so people are really using it. That's the good part. So this makes it really, really easy to beginners, also to people that are already advanced, to just find the query they're searching for. So yeah, I mean,
fully agree. When I started my journey with the parse command line, first thing, because I hate reinventing the wheel, but there wasn't any. So
yeah. I'm focusing on adding more repositories to this in the next few days and weeks. I hope the first version of this website included only 300 or 400 queries, and thanks to the community and the awesome work of the people, it's over 1,100 queries. So that's crazy. That's a crazy amount. And yeah, it helps a lot of people.
So can you tell a little bit about, what is the process for actually getting in there? What are some of the requirements? We spoke recently. I mean, I doubt that you have any, KQL style requirements yet.
No.
But in terms of, how people set up their queries, or, what would make my GitHub repository easier for you to integrate, in terms of the extension I use for my KQL query files, or can I embed my markup queries in markup? Does that work? Can you maybe tell a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So what I basically do, I've opened the GitHub repository of KQLSearch. It's a public repository. It's open source, so everybody can look into it. And also, if you want, you can also create a pull request just to add a new repository, for example. But if you want to look in the current configuration, it's basically these 4 plus my repository is included in this JavaScript, which pulls the data via a API call, which I will talk in a second, how it's working in the backend. But what it does is it checks for specific extensions. That's Alex. That's a very good question from you. My biggest problem with different repositories is to find the correct extensions or correct files, because I have to automate it. So I can't click through every data or file I want to include in the list of queries. So if I want to automate things, I have to focus on maybe .kql or .txt or .md. So these three are the extensions I'm searching for. That means if you are maybe if let's say Rod or Betjan is creating a new file and with the extension .kql, this will also be shown on the website currently. So I don't have a second check that goes through it. Is this a really valid KQL query, for example? That's not what the website does. So this is the point where I also meant the part with the trustworthy, right? So I need to be sure. So if I am the one that's publishing the website, make it available for people, I need to be sure of the content inside of the website. So that's why I know these guys. So they have these repositories, and I know that they have distinct extensions that they're using, and they are really publish queries that really work in the environment. So that's my manual testing, but to automate things, I look for .kql, .txt files at the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it might. I was thinking how to, how could this be controlled? But actually, to be honest, the solution lays in GitHub itself, right? It means. And it includes myself, too lazy to work with multiple branches. But I would say, well, if you're actively working and you don't want your stuff to be published because it isn't finished yet, well, then you can use a branch. I assume you're only looking into the master branch, right?
Yes, only the master branch. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
This is also the line where specified, right? So file name .ends with .kql, .txt, .md, and I'm excluding the README files from it.
Yeah. And I mean, the inclusion process is basically that you are actively actually targeting a repository. So there's no, if anyone would say, well, I don't want to appear in search KQL, it's not, some crawling you're doing. You're basically, getting the consent from the GitHub owner, the repository owner. Yeah.
I'm just showing data that's also already publicly available.
Yeah. So, yeah. Cool.
Okay. Let me show you give me a second, change the screen window back to the PowerPoint slides. The almost the last slide where the backend is so the website. That's the first time I've really worked with the GitHub API calls. It was adventure, and I should have read the documentation a bit better to just have a better understanding of how it works and what the limits are. But it works right now, so I'm happy. The most important part is that when the user visits the website, in that moment, a API call will be made to GitHub, and the predefined repositories that I've mentioned earlier are being searched for. So every time you visit the website, you have to delete the cache, obviously, because it would just use the latest visits or the data from your last visit to the website. But to have the real-time data from GitHub from these repositories, you just have to refresh your website basically, or clear cache, and there you go. So if I would publish a KQL query right now, and you would refresh your website, you would see it there instantly. So GitHub responds with the data, as I said earlier, .kql.txt.md files from the specific repositories, also from the master branch, and sends it to the front end, which shows the data for the end user, for the visitor. Actually, I was very lucky to the KQLSearch.com website is basically a Node.js application, and also the front end is really easy. So everything I've done with this website could be done by everyone. The pricing thing was a problem for me because I didn't know how much it would cost me to run this website. But actually, it cost me nothing actually. Just I'm paying for the domain name, I guess €1 per month. But the server, which runs on Vercel, which is a website or provider for cloud computing, makes it free for me to run this website. And also the API calls are not reaching the limits. So that's also, I have raised the limits for the API calls, but it still costs nothing for me. So the lucky part for me is I can still run the website without any problems or any costs related to it running. So that's a great part of it. And it's also serving a obvious reason for the community, because people are using it and find it useful for themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely,
yeah. I'm really happy for it actually. So I've only created the website for me, and then 1 week after I created it, I guess it was Rod Trent, which has shared the website on Twitter, and I was very happy about people's feedback. And I thought about myself, so why don't I publish it then openly to everyone on Twitter and write about it on a blog post where I created. That's also important. I've created a blog post or written a blog post about the adventure. How did I wrote the scripts and the backend, and what was the motivation behind it? You can also find this on my website. But yeah, it's interesting future. Also, what I'm working on right now is a browser add-in. So the goal for me is then to have you not visit the website, but you can show the queries in the browser add-in. You just have to open it on the right side on your browser and copy the query from there. So you don't even have to change the tabs or something, or close or open a new browser. Yeah.
Okay. It would make it even easier. Forward to that one. Yeah.
It comes pretty soon actually.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let us know. We'll amplify the message. And yeah, I mean, like Johnny, my mission is, to make KQL more approachable, to evangelize the language. Anything that comes around just the language itself, but also tooling is very welcome.
Yeah, just to make it more accessible for more people. That's my main goal actually. So yeah. Okay, this is the last slide, and then I'm finished actually. These are the websites and also the GitHub repository. Again, it's open source. You can contribute to the website, and also special thanks to the community who are sharing their queries with us. And if you want to play around with KQL, I guess most of us already know the KQL playground, which can be found under this link. Yeah, and if you have questions later on, or maybe in the next days and so on, or you just want to connect, you will find me on Twitter with this handle, Ugur Koc. Okay. That's it from my side, Alex.
Very cool. Thank you very much for taking your time. And yeah, as I mentioned in the introduction, KQL is there for everyone. I also see a lot of useful cases. with Intune. I, for example, had a bank, they wanted to have, although I must admit it's a little bit silly, but let me finish the story. They wanted to have evidence that devices are properly being wiped. So I created a workbook. Now, why I say it's silly, because, well, Intune will record the message that the wiping signal has been sent to the device. So, of course, there's no real evidence that the wipe actually, was successful, because this is a one-way communication. And once the device is back, unfortunately, he cannot tell I was wiped. But yeah, those type of things. People that were using, for the older ones among us, config manager and SSRS, so reporting services. If you're now transitioning to the modern way of working, Microsoft Intune, you definitely want to look into KQL, because there's no reporting services anymore. There's no SQL database anymore behind. And I would even add to it, while in config manager, we had very verbose logging. For me, in my limited work with Intune, Intune was always kind of a black box. Unless you follow Oliver Kieselbach, who can tell you how to dig into the inner workings of Intune, but otherwise, you have, as a normal human mortal, you have to do it with the diagnostic logs that the client gives you. And I feel that now and then, when I'm actually digging into those Intune logs, that it actually does, provide me with useful additional information and context that I wouldn't have otherwise. So yeah, I definitely believe in the future of, Intune, KQL, that becomes the de facto standard for anyone who wants to know what's going on in their environment. Yeah. Great. So yeah, with that, I'd like to conclude, unless someone would like to speak up or bring up a KQL topic they had been working on. I am not really finished with what I'm currently working on, so I move that to next month. But if anyone on the call, would like to bring up a topic, don't be shy. We can also cut it out of the video if you don't feel like, well, if I'm going to talk now, I'll be in the interwebs forever on YouTube. So we respect that. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. And if not, thank you, Ugur, again, for being with us. Thanks to the community who joined live today. And yeah, I hear some noise, so maybe someone wants to speak up.
It's me, I guess. I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me. Great session. Thank you, guys.
Good. Then I wish everybody a nice rest of the evening, and yeah, talk to you in early April. Bye, guys.